Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be talking about inspiration, watercolor, and fairy tales, since that fit with the theme of this piece that I drew the other day, which was so much fun. It is depicting a lady knight coming home from war on her beautiful steed. So this was a lot of fun. I did draw the sketch in Procreate and on my iPad, and then I printed it out and transferred it onto watercolor paper, which is what you're watching now. The way I transfer it is I print it out on regular printer paper, and then I hold it up to the window with the drawing facing away from me, and I do what I call blacking it on the back, which I was taught by my old junior high and high school art teacher, and I do that by using an ebony pencil and rubbing it on the back where I know the lines are, and then I flip it over, tape it to the watercolor paper, and go over it with a regular pencil, or in this case I used a blue leaded pencil, and it will transfer the lines onto the watercolor paper. So that's how I did that. Now I want to talk a little bit today about inspiration. Mainly, you can't wait for it. There's no point in waiting for inspiration. You have to make it. Now sometimes inspiration will hit you, but you can't just wait for it to happen. You will waste a lot of time, and you won't get a lot done if you're constantly waiting for inspiration to hit you. Now, sometimes you may have a current muse that helps inspire you. I've been drawing a lot of Harry Potter lately, and that's because I just got back from a really fun trip that involved Harry Potter, and I just finished rewatching all the movies, and I'm currently rereading the books, so it's something that's on my mind and is very inspiring to me right now. But it's not always inspiring to me, so I have to find some other things to draw sometimes. And especially since I'm doing art professionally right now and it is my job, I can't wait to work. I can't wait to do things and draw things. I have to find the inspiration either inside of myself or outside of myself, but I have to look for it. I can't just wait for it to happen. Which might sound hard, but once you get into the groove, you'll get there. You may still have times where you don't know what to draw, but there are methods around that. I know some people who keep a list of drawing prompts in their sketchbook, and when they don't know what to draw, they consult that, and that's what they draw from. There are other ways to do it. You can keep boards on Pinterest. A lot of writing prompts are actually good drawing prompts, and there are a lot of those on Pinterest. But you really just have to figure out what you want to draw. And you can't always decide, does this sound fun to draw? Does this sound easy to draw? Sometimes if you have the picture in your head, whether it sounds fun or sounds easy, you just gotta do it. With this particular drawing, I have almost no experience drawing horses. I'm not practiced in it. The anatomy of them are really weird sometimes, but I looked up a bunch of references. I had this image in my mind. I knew the horse was not gonna be fun, was not gonna be easy. But I knew it's what I wanted to draw, and I knew it would make a good image. So I, went to Pinterest and I found all the cool references, and I sat there looking at references while I drew this picture. And it really helped, but I didn't wait for the inspiration. I went out and found it. Now, next I want to talk a little about watercolor. On one of my recent videos, I said that I really didn't know how to talk about watercolor because I didn't feel like I was very good at watercolor, or to say that I didn't feel like I was a good enough authority on watercolor to be able to teach watercolor or talk about it. Something I've realized is there's not really a right or wrong way to do watercolor. There are just different methods and different results. I know a lot of people who their way of doing it, and it is one of the more traditional ways, is to wet the paper first. I do a little bit of that towards the end of this video, but it's not what I used for the primary method. It just isn't the textures I like when I'm doing watercolor. So experiment. What kind of textures can you make? What kind of methods work best for you, and what do you like to do, and what results do you like? You can, figure this out by researching, observing, seeing what other artists do. It's really just up to you and what you like and what you want to do. Layering is a big key to watercolor. You'll see it later in the video, but when I'm doing the horse especially, I start out with layers. I do it very light. I leave the highlights. And even if I'm going to go back and color on top of the white portions that I leave, I still leave them so that I have the option. It's always best to start out with light colors so that you can then go back and add more color. Watercolor is very easy normally to add on top of, but it's very difficult to get the white back once you've colored it. Now, again, with leaving the whites, you do want to leave that. You can go back sometimes with gel pens or even with white acrylic to put the white back, but it won't have the same textures as having just left the white in the first place. So it's very important to protect your whites. Sometimes if you have a large white space that you know you need to keep, it can be good to get masking gel and put it on top of it to protect it until you're done with the surrounding areas. And then you peel the fluid off, the masking fluid, and you have the white spot. I don't use that as often because I'm not an expert with using it, and I can make it even messier when I try to use it, but I have used it before and it can be very helpful. So with watercolor, yeah, just make sure you layer, experiment, find what you like, find what you enjoy, make the different textures. One of my favorite textures that I've ever found, I actually used in this video when I was doing the armor on the horse's neck. It's almost a blotchy look, but it was very fun and very easy to achieve. Next, I kind of want to talk about fairy tales. This is the fun portion of the video because I love fairy tales. I have a book of the Grimm brothers fairy tales, at least some of them, and they're just so much fun. Disney is normally what we think of when we think of fairy tales nowadays, but I think the best fairy tales are actually the originals that were recorded back by, the brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen. They're usually a little grittier, they're usually a little scarier, because a lot of times fairy tales were oral traditions with the purpose, often, of making sure your kids behaved, making sure they went to bed on time, making sure they didn't get out of bed, all these kind of things. So they are a little scarier sometimes, but they can also have a lot of heart and a lot of fun to them. One of my favorites that I only discovered within the past year or so is actually the story of the 12 Hunters by the Brothers Grimm. If you don't know this story or you haven't heard of it, I highly encourage going to look it up because it's a very fun, cool story that I think a lot of people would really enjoy nowadays because of the twists in the story of it. It's about a princess, and she's not the kind of princess that you normally think of when you think of princess. It's actually really cool, and I highly encourage you to go look it up. I actually took this story and I made it into a short comic for a project over this past summer for school. I haven't posted it anywhere but my Patreon because I'm not 100% happy with it. I didn't have a lot of time to do it, but I'm still very pleased with it. I learned a lot, and I just really enjoyed the story. I still love the story, even though I spent a really long time working on it. But it is a really cool story. A lot of the fairy tales I tend to like are slightly darker, slightly grittier. Fairy tales kind of like Into the Woods, twists like that, or the twist of the Snow White story in Snow White and the Huntsman. That's one I really enjoy too. What kind of fairy tales do you enjoy? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. For now, that's almost got all this wrapped up. What's not shown in the video is I did go back and I put a lot of gold highlights on the embellishments around the edge of the frame, the decorative frame. So that was a lot of fun. Well, anyways, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next video.